Hi, Theresa at Garden Party Flower Farm and some of my perennial friends. Hosts and uh, people who talk to me, farmers who talk to me, I often hear you say, I'm just going to do perennials, as though, you see that just in there, as though it's going to save you from the tyranny of the annuals. It's going to somehow be easier. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Can perennials save you? And this is part one. We're going to focus on perennials that bloom between the beginning of the season and the end of June, more or less. And there'll be a part two for the rest of the season. And as always, I want to thank Open Food Network Canada for supporting me and bringing information to you, and the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership in supporting Open Food Network Canada so they can do this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about perennials. So here, what is a perennial? So a plant that lives for more than 2 years. Um, in other words, unlike an annual, which the entire mission of an annual is to bloom and set seed in 1 year and then die. Perennials have little or no woody growth, but they live through the winter and they come back the following summer. And so they're returning from root stock, not from seeds. And that has some implications for growing them. They can reproduce by seed. They do make seed like annuals and biennials, but you can also propagate them vegetatively, roots and so forth. Now, we're not going to be tight to a definition of uh, perennials in the sense of fibrous root systems. We're going to talk about a few bulbs in this presentation too. So the advantages to you, I think you've already thought through. You don't need to buy plugs or seeds at the beginning of every season and transplant them every year. Although I would say that 80% of my flower sales are perennials, and I still plant perennials every single year. So I don't know how much it saves me, and perennials are more expensive. So I'm not sure it saves you much. You save time when you're busiest in the spring. This may be true. I think you pay for that later on. You get that early bloom coverage though, before your annuals start. Here we are at the end of the June. I think I picked one pinch of cosmos the other day, and really it was a pinch I missed, not an actual stem I intended for. But I'm still weeks away from having the annuals bloom, and I have tons and tons of perennials blooming. They're pretty, they're nice in the landscape. If your farm is your yard, and mine is becoming my yard because I'm kind of in this process of retiring from the rows and rows and rows, they're really nice to work with perennials because they just look so beautiful out your window. And you can have coverage all the time, a little tricky, but you can. They're not often available in global chains. So if you're selling to florists or designers, you've already got an advantage here because these are things that probably is going to be tough for them to get elsewhere. And I find, especially the June perennials, see what you think as we go through, but I think there's a nostalgia for them with consumers because they remember their parents or grandparents' gardens that had perennials. At least I hear that often in my bouquet bar when people come to my farm. But this is not a panacea. You're not going to escape insect life. The kinds of insects that attack perennials are much worse than the kind that attack annuals. And the thing about this, if you've got something nasty on your annuals, I had some annual stems in my greenhouse this year that were just loaded with aphids. I just decided not to even deal with them. I just pulled them and chucked them, right? You can't really do that with perennials. If an insect winters over in the soil, which it usually does, it's wintering over right where the plant is, so it's going to be back next year. So it's actually a little tougher. And there's lots of insects that bother perennials, so that's one problem. There's also some other challenges about perennials that you don't have so much with annuals. You need excellent drainage. Much harder to do perennials if you're on clay. You need to think of raised beds or amending your soil and so forth, because soils that get wet into the fall and over the winter, most perennials, not all, but most perennials don't like that very much. They don't like they like to have moisture going into winter to get them through that winter, but they don't want to sit in moisture when it freezes. Um, weed management can be a massive problem with perennials. With annuals, you get weeds, chalk that up to a learning experience, mow them down, start again next year. Pretty expensive proposition to do that for perennials. The site has to be free from perennial weeds. And I know you're right away going to go to the lasagna gardening thing. I know. I've been there, done that so many times, I can't even tell you. The thing is, if you have annual weeds, and you've got to know what kind of weeds you have, you've got to look them up. There's all kinds of weed guides. If you have annual weeds, that's going to work for you. If you have perennial weeds, weeds that spread by underground roots and rhizomes, there's just no way that lasagna thing's going to do it. And you're going to, in 2 years' time, have weeds worse than you did in the beginning because they live forever under the soil. And they're going to love coming up through all your perennials. So weed management, like get a clean field before you start into perennials. Soil building. Perennial plants need nourishment. Now, if you know me, you know that I really don't fertilize. I fertilize soil. I build the soil first, and then my plants just live. You never see me out there spreading or spraying any kind of fertilizer or compost tea or whatever. But there are a few times with perennials that I will, because they just need more, especially big plants, because they're going to be in one place potentially for a long time. So you need to think of your fertility program a little bit differently. Another challenge is they have short bloom windows, 3 or 4 weeks. A few are longer, and sometimes there's second succession. But, you know, again, selling to designers, I find, well, the public too, people just get used to seeing something. And they come back the next week and you say, oh, that's finished. Oh, I'm taking it away from you. So I find in selling perennials as cut flowers, you need to kind of give people advance warning, right? Like, here come the whatever, if you're waiting for this, right? Because it'll be a short season. I'm doing that right now with baby's breath. Here comes the baby's breath. Next week, it won't last long, it won't wait. Most perennials need constant division and replacement. I'm going to show you, I mean, stems will get thin and flowers will get weaker if you don't divide. And I think that happens even if you dump fertilizer all over them all the time. They just need space sometimes. And if you're having a perennial that's having a problem, my answer is always divide it and see what happens. Because it's fresh and it's new and it's going to put all that it can into building a good root system again and start over. Perennials love starting over. And because of that, you actually need more space. And I think it's very challenging if you have a small land base to think through what's your short list for perennials. And hopefully these presentations help you decide on that. Because for some perennials, you have to have a clump or a row or an area that is at its peak, say year 3. And in year 3, if you don't want to be without them totally for a couple of years, which who does, you start to take some out and divide and start a new area, so that when that first group is finished and the flowers are not as nice anymore, you have a new area ready to go. And we generally think of 3 years, the planting year, a second year when it's growing. Second year is really important for weed management and fertility and any insect management. And then the third year is the charm, and that's when you are cutting like crazy. And the final thing I will say is nice ones can be hard to find, and you really need to do your variety research. I know most of us are familiar with going to nurseries, and it's a great place to get perennials, but you kind of need to know what you're getting, because nurseries do tend to sell perennials that are for the landscape, and so they're often shorter. They're often not paying as much attention to stem length. And a breeder will breed a perennial that is shorter. Why? So that it looks nice in a pot and sells well for the nursery in the spring, because that's what it's all about. Looks good in a pot. And they will trade off stem length for that, and perhaps even bloom period. So you really want to think about perennials and do your research if you're buying for your flower farm. Okay, I'm going to do a countdown. starting with 15 and going to 1 of my April to June bloomers. Now, some of these are still blooming, some finished some weeks ago. I have some examples to show and tell if I could still scrounge them up. Number 15 is Veronica. So I would say especially the Skylar series, very tough, hardy plants, although I grow other Veronica too, and they're great. Very prolific, definitely a workhorse. Mine start, I should have said, I'm in zone 5A, and the date is July 1st. Happy Canada Day, because I'm going to show you some things. So it starts for me mid to late June, depending on the season, and it keeps going. Cut it down to the ground, you'll get a great second flush. White, purple. Do I have a pink here? Pink. Oh, it's going to be attack of the perennials here. You could have nightmares. Okay. They look like this. Gorgeous, gorgeous, and just so nice in a bouquet. Such a nice hit. I find the pink to be the toughest, followed by the white, followed by the purple. But you know, every farm is a little bit different. Totally reliable for me in zone 5. I actually have some Veronica in pots in my unheated greenhouse because I get a little boost on the season. They bloom a little bit earlier, just for a few, and then I put those pots outside. Here's a little trick. I'm going to show you. This for me, I love about Veronica. So I don't know if you can see this really well, but can you see the tip? Now, I've had this out of my cooler and it's wilting. That can happen on these secondary stems. In fact, you want to harvest when the secondary stems are standing up too. But you can see the trick is the middle stem is starting to seed. I don't know if you can see that long part that has no flower. So this stem is too thick for me to use my fingers, but I'll show you what you can do. I'll show you here. Out in the field, like I have a whole lot of this right now, and it hasn't sold. But what I do is I go through the field, and I'm just going to bend it down and do a massacre here. There. I leave it like that in the field. So now I have this like Veronica claw, and these will fill in, and I get a second flush, different flower. I love these little flower tricks. The designers I sell to thought this was a different flower. It's the same flower. It doesn't need netting, and you gotta love that in a perennial. You got so many things that need netting. Well, we've had major wind and rainstorms this year. It's just standing there blooming its heart out. There are some downsides. I find it needs division or thinning every 3 years or so. I've got some stems that are getting thinner, and I don't know if you'll be able to see, like the purple. I don't know if you can catch this, the thickness of the purple stem versus the pink stem, the purple stem. You see the difference? The purple stem needs division, I would say, and the pink stem doesn't. You can tell by stem heftiness whether they need dividing or not. And it's also readily imported in the chains. So people know what it is. Designers know what it is if you're selling to designers. But so what? Beautiful flower. But it's only number 15. Okay, number 14, foxtail lilies. Stunning in the landscape. Just to put them in your garden, just to look at them is awesome. I have a very large row of pink ones. They come in a peach, a pink, a white, and a yellow. And they're just stunning. I love them so much. Very strong line flower, and they will last a month in the cooler. And if you let them get crowded, they become shorter. This often happens with perennial roots. The same as those stems became weaker on the Veronica, the foxtail lilies will become smaller, and that's good because that makes them more usable. They're very easy to divide, and the quality of division you'll get compared to the roots you're going to buy from a supplier, which always look god awful. The quality of your own propagation is going to be amazing. You don't need netting. They're huge. They're 5 to 6 feet out there, and gorgeous color. Let me just show you if you're not familiar. Here's the peach foxtail. So you see they start blooming from the bottom. This guy's been in the cooler, gosh, 3 weeks, and you see he's tipping there. And you know what you can do? So you can pull these guys off, the bottom open ones, especially if they start to, their stamens start to show. So you can pull them off all the way up, and then sell it as a smaller flower, just cut. Sorry, I'm struggling with my camera, and just cut it as a smaller flower. So I love it for that because they last forever. Here's a smaller one. This is smaller, peachier. Maybe that one was yellower. Sometimes it's hard to tell the peachy and the yellow because they're similar. The pink is very easy to tell, but this is a very, this is my bloom here is 11 inches. It's completely usable in an arrangement, and it's only small because I've left it get crowded. So love the foxtail lilies. Now there's some downside. The big ones are too big for most of your bouquet work. Um, Consumers seem a little intimidated by it at my bouquet bar. If I put the little ones out, they love them. It's kind of an expensive initial investment, but again, reliably hardy for me. I think it's hard to find some of the diverse ones. I'm struggling a bit to find whites. I have a few whites that I think came by accident that I'm going to propagate, but I would love more whites. And I'm told there's some other varieties too, but I haven't really experimented with too many other different varieties. But love the foxtails. Okay, number 13. I'm relatively new to this one, Geum. It's finished blooming. I don't have an example for you. I think the tangerine and Mai Tai are exceptional flowers in the landscape. Um, there's one called banana daiquiri that would be good for cutting as well. You have to look for tall stem length with geums because a lot of them are short. Um, but tangerine, Mai Tai, banana daiquiri, perhaps some others are great for cutting. Very prolific. They multiply very quickly. I just last spring planted a few plants, and I had lots of bouquets cut from them this year. So year 2 was great. Year 3 will be even better. So they're spreading nicely. The downside, it's very ephemeral and very small flower. You need a lot to make an impact. It's great if you're doing work where you want just those hits of color, of course. And varieties can be hard to find and get. I know we struggled for a couple of years in the plug sale to get the Mai Tai, and we never found the banana daiquiri last year, but I think we'll have it this year. So Geum, number 13. Number 12, Lady's Mantle. Do I have Lady's Mantle up here? Mine is pretty much finished, so I maybe did not even grab any. Too bad. I think you know what it looks like. It's a fairly common flower. I love it. It's shown here with a perennial scabiosa, which they make a beautiful couple in the landscape, I think. I'm always talking about the landscape now because that's where my new direction is heading as I move out of cut flowers. Very versatile filler, Lady's Mantle. Does really well in a cooler, lasts a long time. You can get very tall stems. People think it's short. It is not short. If yours is short, divide it, put it in richer soil, and you'll be rewarded with taller stems and very hefty stems. It's perfect with peonies. I just love it with peonies. It's very prolific, almost too prolific. You could have a problem, it can spread. And you get a remarkably good price for a very prolific and inexpensive flower, which doesn't often happen, right? No pests bother it. Although one year, Kent caterpillars were here and they loved the Lady's Mantle. That was very disappointing for me. Stores well, as I said. What are the downsides? Well, once you have it, even if you don't want it. So the gift that keeps giving. And I think you need to divide it every now and again to get the good heftier stems. Number 11 is the perennial scabiosa. And here I'm talking about the Fama series. I know scabiosa confuses everybody because there's annual and there's perennial, and there's seed strain, and there's things that are only from cuttings. Here we're talking about the Fama series of scabiosa. Oh, I bet I have it. It's still blooming for me. It'll bloom all summer. It's another one that I start in pots in the greenhouse, and then I move them outside so I get early ones. So yes, the purple, I think they call it blue, and the white, gorgeous, gorgeous flower. You can see long stems, and these are pretty good hefty stems. Um, it will also get thinner stems once it starts to need nutrients or need division. Mine is quite reliably perennial in zone 5. I'd be anxious to hear if that's the case for others, but not a problem for me. Reblooming throughout the season. Um, it gets either thrips or tarnished plant bug, and I'm not sure which, but sometimes the blooms don't open all the way. This year has been a good year for that. So I've been lucky. The flowers can get huge in the tunnel. It prefers cooler weather, so the first ones that I get out of my tunnel are just like unbelievably large. This heat will make them a little smaller. Oh, that's pretty big. I mean, July 1st, we've had heat waves, and they're decent sized blooms, so they're doing okay. Downside, slows in the heat can get thrips. If the soil is poor, the stems get flimsy. But it's one that's readily available in the plug sale too. In fact, we just had a very large order, and I will have big pots of this in the perennial sale, which will happen here in August this year, if you're looking for it. Number 10, Centranthus. I almost moved this up beyond number 10 because I really do like it. Mine's finished, so I don't have a live cut here. It's also called valerian or Jupiter's beard. There's also a white form, which I'm going to get next year. You see, it's such an addiction. You just keep buying perennials. I call it the chameleon color, and you can't really tell from a picture, but designers who work with it love it because they say it works with everything. You moves. It's one of these colors that moves between different shades of pinks and reds to peaches to blues. Like it'll just go, and it's a linker kind of flower. It lasts a long time, even before division. I think my patch is like maybe even 7 years old. It needs kind of dividing now. And again, you can tell because smaller blooms and thinner stems. It starts when the peonies start and it goes for 4 or 5 weeks. So it's a reasonable bloom period. It tolerates poor soil, but in rich soil, it's amazing. Downsides, it doesn't like the hot humidity. This is the case with a lot of spring perennials. And buyers aren't very, very familiar with it. If you just tell a designer, oh, I have Centranthus, they will have no idea what you're talking about. It's not a wholesale chain flower, really. But once people know it, they love it. And on my bouquet bar, everybody goes for it. It's just wonderful color. Feverfew, Metricaria. I probably don't need to even tell you about this one because I bet, oh, look at here, look here. I found the lady's mantle. I have this big bucket beside me and I missed it. This is lady's mantle, if you're not familiar. And we were back there. Sorry, missed it. I'm just looking. I do have Feverfew. This is the white. This is the Vegmo series, the white one, and the I can't remember if it's just called yellow or what it's called, but I like the yellow little hits. Easy from seed or from plugs. If you plant them in the fall, they're very hardy. Again, zone 5A, and I think you get a superior bloom the next spring. And heftier stems. They will reseed, but they also get a little bit weedy and messy looking, I think. They don't have that strong, straight stem for cutting. They're a pleasure to cut. I love flowers that are easy to cut. It's a long day plant, so it needs 14 hours to initiate its flowering, so you can't really make it grow too much out of season. I would try multiple kinds if I were you, because I think you'll be surprised by some of the others. Consumers love it. It's such a cheery flower. People always say, do you have the little daisies? And this is the one they mean. Very cheery. It's considered a short-lived perennial, but really it's one of these ones that's hard to tell because it's coming back from the roots, but it's also reseeding. So you'll see the little plants around a clump in the spring. You can dig them and move them, for example. But again, I think planting in the fall is a much better move. Baptisia, huge diverse group of Baptisias. And I think as flower farmers, we're all kind of on this train now because we recognize some of the benefits. Very prolific, amazing, diverse colors. strong stems, blooms, and then you get the pods afterwards, the seed pods. Spring when not much else is blooming. It's also a great foliage plant. No pinching, no netting, like it's like a heaven plant. Also beautiful in the landscape. Um, Widely available from landscape nurseries. You're so this is when I say that I mean it's a nursery that supplies landscape companies, and often they will have a retail and a wholesale price depending on how many you're buying. And sometimes you don't have to buy many, 5 or 6, and you'll get a wholesale price. Now you're maybe saving 10%. You're not saving a whole lot really. Um, there's no need to divide. I have a bunch I have to divide, and I hear it's not easy to do, so I'll let you know about that. But I would say it's an essential flower for flower farmers. And I do have one. This has been in my cooler for, I don't know, 2 weeks maybe, because it's already finished outside. Now we're going to this, right? The seed pod, which are beautiful too. But this was the blue. This is Blueberry Sunday. That's what that one is. Downside, slow to establish. If you can buy 1 gallon potted plants, it's worth the money because they grow slow and you take some time to get the smaller plugs. This year in the plug sale, we got smaller plugs, like 2-inch pots, and I'm like, oh, this is going to take forever. Bleeding hearts. These are long finished for me, so I don't have an example to show you, but don't think of the standard pink bleeding heart. Put that right out of your head. In fact, it's a different species altogether, by the way. I think the colors, this pale pink you see in the picture, you can't really see the red in behind. Cupid, Valentine, these are beautiful, beautiful bleeding hearts. It's one of the earliest perennials for me. Usually makes Mother's Day, not always, but it's always nip and tuck. I hurry it along. I put over it, I don't know if you know those hot caps that people put over their tomato plants. I stick some over my little bleeding heart plants in the spring to race them along so they make Mother's Day. Long living, doesn't need division very much, very, very hardy, very easy to move, can be lifted. I have in the past lifted them, brought them into the tunnel, let them bloom, lift them, put them back outside, let them grow, and do. It's just a little bit of work. But I love them so much, and I really want them early. In my tunnel, I would get them for Easter, which I have now decided is too early because I'm not selling at Easter. But very interesting plant that way. Strong nostalgia and recognition with buyers. Brides often ask for it. They ask for it in September, which I don't have it in September. It works well with tulips. We're always looking for things. Baptisia foliage and bleeding heart are the things to go to, really. It's also one of the few cut flower perennials that will take a fair amount of shade. So a still bee would be another. So that's a good thing if you only have shade. What could be the downsides of this number 7 plant? It's bad to harvest. It's really hard to harvest. You got to get right down there and cut them from the bottom and untangle them because they break so easy. It's a terrible flower to ship. When I used to sell to the local flower collective in the GTA, I sold a lot of bleeding hearts, and you wouldn't believe the cursing. If the bleeding hearts could tell you a story, because they break and they break in transit. And I mean, yes, they're beautiful and they're delicate, but they're very difficult to ship. The other problem is it's one of these flowers where, the pollinators and us don't really get along. People always say, oh, it's so wonderful that you have all these pollinators. Okay, like they're my enemy. The pollinator, if you're a flower farmer, a pollinator is actually your enemy. Okay, don't say this too loud to environmentalists. They're going to get mad at me. But what does a flower want to do? It wants to be pollinated so that it can make seed. And as soon as it is pollinated, it's not such a good cut flower anymore. It changes it physiologically. The vase life will often go down as soon as those seed pods start to form, right? This is why they tell you things like foxgloves with a lot of blooms on a stem, harvest it before many of them open. Because once many of them are open, the bees love it, and you just have seeds. You're harvesting seed pods. So the thing about bleeding hearts, though, is the bees love the nectar so much that they actually make holes in each little flower to look for the nectar. So there you're harvesting and you pick up this lovely stem and shoot, the, bee, the bees beat you to it. Um, and it has a very short harvest window, 3 weeks, strong harvest, and then you start to decline. But it's up at number 7 because of the nostalgia and because I wait for it every spring and always will. Mentioned foxgloves a minute ago, so I put it at number 6. Oh, do I have 2 number 6s? No, okay, that was number 7. Okay. Foxglove, number 6. Lots of diversity here. I know we often get stuck on the Dalmatian peach because it's peach, I guess. I don't know. Oh, come on. Let's play. Let's plan some different ones, okay? Because there's lots of diversity out there. Uh, I love it for that reason alone. It gets confusing to us though, because some varieties are annual, some varieties and first year flowering perennials, and then some varieties are biennial. So yeah, there's general foxglove confusion. And I think they do things differently in different zones anyway, so you kind of have to experiment with it. Another flower with a very strong nostalgic value. I sell mixed buckets, and it's one of the flowers everybody wants all the time. If you have foxgloves, okay. It's also one of these flowers that has a first cut, and then you get secondary stems, which are the same stem as the first cut, almost like a different flower. Uh, so you don't have to pinch. You can wait for the first cut, and then your cut is like the pinch. Or if you only want 18-inch stems, then pinch, and then you won't get the first big fat one. You'll get a whole bunch of smaller ones. Same as with snapdragons. Good range of colors. It punches above its weight in so many ways. It's easy to find, always easy to get, easy to seed, easy to harvest, easy to store. Big impact with buyers. Ticks lots of boxes as a flower. Um, very readily available. What could be the downsides? If you're storing, it does store well, but it gets squished really easy. If you've got, like my cooler just isn't big enough. And so things have to be side by side, pretty tight in there. And they get squished because they're so delicate. I tend to manhandle flowers when I wrap them, and maybe that's my problem and not the flower's problem. But they do get squished if they're at all open when they're harvested. And as I said, bees love it too. So it's another one where you're fighting with the bees out there. Alliums, number 5. Yes, still more of a favorite of mine than even the foxglove. Again, because of the diversity. I have never met an allium that I didn't love. Don't think of the purple sensation. It's kind of like people think of bleeding hearts and they think of the gaudy pink thing. Think beyond that. Look through any of your bulb suppliers catalog. There are so many alliums, and they stretch the season. I have had alliums from the first week in May. I'm now at the first week of July, and my second latest alliums are just in bud. They'll bloom 2 weeks time, 3 weeks time, followed by the little white ones, which will bloom even into August. So it's almost all year. There's some kind of allium out there, and some are big and focal, and some are tiny and filler. Very reliable, very easy to grow, easy to access. There's lots of sources of bulbs. They are also a great landscape plant. They capture a lot of attention out there. What are the downsides? Buyers really like them. On my bouquet bar, like giant white alliums just fly. But for some reason, flower farmers don't grow them so much. So I don't know what that's about. I think they're amazing. People maybe worry about the smell, but honestly, it dissipates really quickly. I've never ever had someone concerned about the smell. When I first cut them, I smell it, but other than that, I don't. Over multiple years, they'll get crowded and you'll get smaller flowers, and maybe you want that. I mean, I now have, purple alliums that are big and purple alliums that are small, because I leave some get crowded. But I think it could be more widely grown as a cut flower. Lasts a long time in a cooler. This is I'm forgetting the variety, the giant white one. Someone will know. You probably know it. This has been in my cooler for 6 weeks. So it's still passable. Now, if you look really close, the seed pods are forming. And I don't know if you can see the little white, I put my hand in front. See how the little yellow stamens are sticking up? So that means it's kind of past. But still, it'll be the last ones will be in my bouquet bar this weekend, you know. So that's good. So alliums, number 5. Here we go. We're coming down to the top ones. What do you think is going to be number 1? Make your bet now. Okay, number 4, columbine. I would have put this higher, except there's some significant downsides to it. Uh, this is a personal favorite. I have loved columbines always and forever. And even when I'm not growing cut flowers to sell anymore, I'm going to have columbines in my garden. Um, it's so interesting and delicate. It's not like any other cut flower. I wish I had recorded this a few weeks ago so that I could hold up some of my favorites for you. Um, Swan pink, which is this picture, the bottom left there, the pink yellow one, is my all-time favorite. 3 feet tall this year. And the others are, the top one there is, I'm forgetting its name. The dark one is, of course, Black Barlow. The Barlow series is a blue and a black. Another very nostalgic flower for people. Designers love them because they're so delicate. They're often ready before Mother's Day in my greenhouse, and then the heat takes them out, and then they're followed by the outside ones. They also do well in shade, but in my experience, they do better in sun. A 4-week harvest window at least. They store well, I find too, if they're harvested at a good moment in bud. There are some significant downsides that leave them only at number 4. You really have to pay attention to varieties because they're bred for landscape, and so they're often short. You really want to go for the taller ones. I get terrible columbine sawfly. So this is a little fly, and it lays its eggs, and then there's these little tiny worms, and they devastate the plant in a matter of days. They can devastate the plant. They don't necessarily kill the root. It's true, the plant will come back, but in my experience, it comes back a little withered looking, not as strong as it was before the fly got to it. And they're really a tender, not tender perennial, but an iffy perennial. Like they only last short-lived for 2-3 years. I replant some every single year in a different spot, trying to stay ahead of the sawfly because I don't really spray things, and that's how I have them all the time. So I put it up at number 4. If it wasn't for the sawfly, it would be higher. Number 3, peonies. Okay, how many of you thought that was going to be number 1? Haha, I could have been number 1. I do love peonies. Peonies are like extraordinary. I just pulled the last ones July 1st now, and my peony season was early, out of my cooler, and they're still like so beautiful, right? In the cooler even. And I've got ones wrapped in cold storage that probably I'll leave for another week, maybe. I don't store very long because my cooler isn't really cold enough. Why are peonies number 3? Well, first of all, let's talk about some of their amazing things. You should have them, first of all. Every flower farmer needs to have peonies because everybody's going to ask you about them. Totally reliably perennial, very hardy. I think zone 3, it's amazing. So truly a Canadian perennial. They can be encouraged to bloom for Mother's Day by putting hoops over them. In fact, next year, the little trick I told you that I do with my bleeding hearts, where I put the little tomato, I think they call them hot caps or something like that, over the bleeding hearts, I'm going to do it over the peonies too, and see if just that couple of week boost early in April races them forward a little bit. See if that happens. I have had them blooming in my hoop house, unheated hoop house, in pots. Pots heat up faster in the soil, right? So that might be another way to get them earlier. But I didn't think the blooms were as beautiful as outside from a pot, so I got rid of those. They don't need division to stay, vigorous. They can live there forever where they are. Pests don't generally bother them. There's a few things, and there's some diseases, but like compared to so many other things, you're almost home free with the peony. They really set the standard for the focal flower. When people say, I want focal flowers, they're saying, I want peonies or roses, right? It just blows me away that we can't think a little bit more diverse, but that's what people mean when they say that. Okay, why is it only number 3 then? Because there's some downsides. Um, Personally, I think markets could be getting saturated with peonies. Uh, I don't know. I certainly didn't sell all my peonies this year or last year or the year before, despite trying very hard to do that. Um, Maybe I just have too many for where I am. I don't know. But all the new flower farmers, everybody plants them. I know that because I sell peony roots and everybody plants them. So uh, I don't know. I worry a little bit that there's going to be a downward pressure on price. And because the markets are saturated now, it's like maybe we're pushed to buy the more expensive and extravagant varieties, like Pastel Elegance, for example, which I have bought, and it is like an unbelievable peony. Oh my God, did that flower blow me away? I just can't wait to propagate more of them. Like beautiful, beautiful flower. Uh, so the old standards, I don't know, are they going to be seen as common now that we have these newer ones coming along? I'm just raising the question. I'm not sure about the market for peonies. Um, they blow open in just the slightest heat, just the whiff of heat at the end of May, beginning of June, and they're like, oh, here I go. So they're terrible as a farmer's market flower for that reason, right? I mean, they're just out there blown open. Now, people like them, don't get me wrong, but is it a climate warming flower for us in Southwest Ontario? I really wonder if we're not going to struggle more and more with peonies. It's just a guess I have. The season's relatively short because it gets hot fast. I think it's a great flower for those of you in zones 4 and 3. And I'm not saying you don't get heat waves. I know when you get fires and things. I mean, I know. But, it's very interesting, Canada, with the zones going from 7 to 3 growing flowers. If we had a domestic trade in peonies where we're the ones shipping to each other, I think it'd be an amazing thing. Um, if anybody wants to organize that sort of thing. I think it'd be quite amazing. Look how well Alaska's doing with peonies, for example. So we could do something about the market if we work together. I think it's expensive to grow in quantity because of its initial investment. And then you need to wait for peak maturity. And I know you can harvest first year, and people do, and they say it doesn't hurt the roots. It's the reason we have this disagreement, I think, is it's because of how long or short you're cutting that stem, right? If you're only cutting 12 inches, 30 centimeters, you're still leaving some foliage. Most stems will be higher than that. You're still leaving foliage to photosynthesize. So you're not impacting the root that much. But every stem is an eye, and that eye has to rejuvenate itself. It has to have photosynthesis happening. So if you cut them all down, you're not going to have a great root. And people who say they are, well, I don't know how long you're cutting your stems. I want to recommend disc budding. For years and years, I grew peonies and I didn't take the side buds off. And then one year I did. I had nothing else to do. No, someone urged me to try it, and I did. And it was tedious, but was completely worth it. It's a big difference. It's convinced me that I should disc bud my dahlias, which I've also never done, which I'll do this year. Sometimes little things matter a lot, and I think disc budding's one of them. And that takes time. And it does get susceptible to foliage diseases. And usually I cut mine back by sometimes even early August, middle of August, because they're black and they're not, once the leaves are black or have disease, they're not photosynthesizing efficiently anyway. So I find it to be a bit of an exhausting flower. The orders, the requests, are the peonies ready yet? The standards that people have, designers asking just how open is it, how close is it? Is it at marshmallow? What the heck? I mean, it's an exhausting flower and it feels frantic to me, and that's why I only gave it number 3. Okay, number 2. Oh, Do you know number one yet? Okay, number three, lupins. Okay, I was in a trade-off between this and number one. I was really 50-50. I love lupins. If I had to choose, and I'm so glad that I don't have to choose, I would choose lupins over peonies. I love them both. Okay, I love them. But I keep planting lupins. I keep planting peonies too. Such a wide range of colors, and that's very exciting. I keep trying to get new varieties for us in the plug sale. Another nostalgic flower, people know them. Designers love them. They love the color range. Um, it's another one where good drainage is essential. They don't like standing in moisture with their feet wet. I find the prices that you get, again, selling wholesale for lupins beats peonies. Not that many people have them. They're still being undersupplied, and they're not available in global chains. So you have a real advantage there. They're more forgiving to harvest than lots of other things, like compared to bleeding hearts or whatever. I mean, lupins are kind of like Veronica, like that. It's a very speedy harvest. Uh, People ask, why don't they bend? Well, so what if they bend? But they don't usually for me. I cut the stem right down low and I invert it as I walk over to the bucket. And that time that it takes me, because it's a hollow stem, the water that's in the stem goes to the flower and then in the bucket, and it seems to stay hydrated that way. Uh, it has a longer bloom window than peonies by at least a week, maybe two. I actually still cut some yesterday, July 1st. So my peonies have been done for 2 weeks. So it's 2 weeks after my peonies, and I had lupins. It stores very easily in the cooler and stores well if they're cut before the blooms are open. And it looks so beautiful, looks so stunning in the landscape. It does have downsides. It can be hard to find some of the more exotic varieties in plugs. It's also a short-lived perennial. It doesn't always come back. It's kind of finicky that way. When you plant a lupin, it has to have a cold period first of all. There is no first-year flowering lupin in the sense that there is for, say, foxgloves. So it needs what we call vernalization. It needs to be cold. The tricky thing about lupins is it needs to be a certain size before it gets cold. So it's a little picky like that. So if you just plant a baby lupin in, let's say, August, for me in zone 5A, I won't get blooms the next year. The plant will make it through the winter. It will live and it'll be growing the next year. But it wasn't big enough going into winter for that vernalization. So it's going to wait a whole other year. So it's kind of finicky, right? Picky eaters. So if you're planting lupins, it's best to do them before July, really June. It's one of these plants where the bigger is better. Bigger plugs or even potted is better because of this vernalization. And they're finicky about blooming anyway. They'll take their own kind of, they march to their own drummer a little bit. They do their own thing. They do have some other downsides. Some say it's hard to hydrate. This has not been my experience, so I can't really say what that is. And I do nothing special with lupins at all. No solutions, nothing. If they're bending a lot, I might wrap them the same way you do tulips, see if they stand up. But they look beautiful bending. Like, it's the flower. Then you need to have a lot of bulk. So it's for the patient gardener, really. One thing that can happen if you cut them down and you get rain, because it's this hollow stem, the roots will rot. And you can lose them. So you kind of want to watch when you cut them down. If you let them reseed, they won't come true to variety, and you'll get, what you see here. These are reseeded, so they've all gone to pink. But lupin, number 2. Okay, drum roll. What do you think number 1 is? Iris, German iris. Iris has been my favorite flower since I was about 6 years old. I was so fascinated by this thing of threes, right? The 3 down, the 3 up, 3 on a stem. You plant the rhizomes in threes. It's just like flower math. It's like amazing. No other flower has that 3 thing going on. And the diversity is incredible, unbelievable color range. And this is why it's really making a comeback. Designers are really starting to find them. And they're in hot demand right now. Uh, they travel well. You pick them at that lipstick phase, so before the bloom is open, and they can travel short distances out of water absolutely fine. Um, they're remarkable. I call them steel magnolias. They look so delicate, and pour the rain on them, pour the hail on them, and they're just up there again. It's just amazing how those petals do that. Um, each bloom has another hidden one in behind. So when that bloom's done, you just snap it off and another one's going to open. Always make sure you tell your customers that, because I think one of the things people think is that it's short-lived in the vase. It actually lasts a really long time in the vase. You just have to pick off the open bloom and there comes another one along. Perfect line flower for installs and formal arrangements. It maybe is a little tricky to work with in kind of the wildflower look. I'll give you that. Very easy to grow, very hardy, loves cold winters. It's another elbows up perennial in my view. But yes, even number one has some downsides. As I say, tricky to work with in the wildflower look because of the stiff stem. Um, it's a true focal. I mean, it captures a lot of attention and maybe too much. Maybe the iris doesn't play really well with a lot of other flowers. You have to be careful about it. Um, but so she can be a little hard to get along with. Maybe that's why I like her so much. Iris borer can be a significant problem. And if you have it, it really can destroy your entire collection in a year. You have to keep moving irises, partly because they have to keep being divided, because they start to decrease vigor very quickly if you're growing for, sensational blooms, very quickly, at least every 3 years. I actually divide every 3 years, not even because the blooms are fading, but because of the borer. And that's the way that I deal with the iris borer, is I just cut it out of the rhizomes and replant in another place and try to stay ahead of the borer again. It can be hard to source rhizomes in quantity too for wholesale. A lot are not shipped to Canada, as few places. You may end up needing to buy them retail. But you know what? It's one of those flowers where it really doesn't matter, because they propagate so fast. They'll increase so fast that even if you buy one rhizome, in a year you're going to have 3, in another year you're going to have 9, etc. So, I think in that sense, buying them retail is not a big downside. And I have one here. So we're at July 1st. They stop blooming for me 4th week of May, maybe. And I have had irises stored in my cooler in the lipstick, at the lipstick phase, out of water, just laying on a shelf. And this is one of them. I took it out 2 days ago. And look at the color is there. This is the lipstick phase. I don't know if you can see this bloom here. Ideally, you want them all at lipstick. It's hard to get them all at lipstick. But these were completely closed, and now there they are. And when I say about pinching, this is already pinched. This is already a second bloom. None of the others are showing me. But whether this does because it's been stored so long, it might not. But you see a second bloom will come here, and then this one you'll pinch it off, and the second bloom will open there. So irises, my number one. I know you're saying, well, this isn't so spectacular. You're saying, look at that compared to this. Oh, come on. Okay, you want to have a little fight about it. Fine. Pick your favorite. I'm going to pick both, and if I had a lupin, I'd put it with them too, because those are my top 3, and we can argue about the order. There is a flower that I should have put on the list, and I forgot after I did this, and I was just reminded today about it. Amsonia. So this is the foliage. I just picked the foliage, and I didn't even put it in water, so you see it's drooping. It has a lovely little blue flower in June, and worth growing just for the blue, because it's hard to get blues, and it's a true blue. So it's beautiful for that. Lovely landscape plant, you get this ferny foliage. And do you see how this is kind of going yellow? This is a variety called butterscotch. And by the time we get to September, it'll be butterscotch colored. Gorgeous foliage plant. Don't let this droop throw you. It's just because I didn't put it in water. But it's a beautiful plant for foliage. And it has this very soft, ferny look. So I don't know why I overlooked it when I was doing my list, but I did. So Amsonia should be somewhere in the list, maybe around 6 or 7 or something like that. I'm not sure. Okay, a quick summary. So May to June perennials give you something before, with, and after peonies when consumers really want your flowers. You know, we get to now to middle of July, and don't you find sales just kind of fall off? People are on vacation, etc. But the May June groups, if you have to choose, go with the May June group of perennials. They save planting time in the spring, but not necessarily maintenance over the season. A lot of maintenance on perennials, especially around weed management. Each has a shorter bloom window compared to annuals, but so you need to kind of build a lineup of when is your hole? When do you really want to fill that hole with perennials? And in some ways, maybe cool flowers fill a hole better than perennials. So you might want to watch the cool flower recording we did and think about that. They require better soil than most annuals, so you do have some work cut out for you. Easy to get. Most can be purchased from landscape nurseries and plug suppliers if you want quantity. And they can often also be purchased bare root, which means the plant is older. You're just buying the root, and the plant is older, so it will be bigger faster. And you will check out Can Perennials Save You Part 2, where we'll look at the July to October perennials. And I'll do that somewhere around August, I think. And I just want to remind you about the Open Food Network resources. There's some new resources up there. There's one on cool flowers that I just put up, and there's one on networking, and there's one on plugging into plugs, because we're really heading into the plug sale. And if you're new to the plug sale, go watch that video, because in a week or so, we're going to have a meeting to talk about plugs. And so I hope you can join for that. If you're looking for these resources, go to the Open Food Network Canada main page, go to the About tab, Projects, Open Flower Network Project, and there you are. And that's what you need. So again, I'm Theresa, and it's so nice to be able to do these recordings for you. And I hope to talk more as we go through the season and maybe see many of you in person. Thanks so much.